She thought it was only a small job at a quiet ranch, nothing more than cooking meals and cleaning a simple kitchen for a quiet cowboy and his little daughter. The woman arrived with a tired heart and a small suitcase, hoping this job would help her start again after life had broken many of her dreams. The ranch was silent, surrounded by endless fields and the soft sound of the wind. The cowboy barely spoke and kept his distance, while his little daughter watched the new woman carefully with deep, curious eyes. Everything felt normal until the first night. As the woman finished washing the dishes and turned to leave the kitchen, the little girl suddenly grabbed her sleeve and looked up at her with surprising seriousness. Then she whispered softly, "I picked you to be my mommy." The woman froze in shock, her heart racing, because she realized this job might not be as simple as she thought. The young woman stepped off the dusty bus and looked around the lonely ranch, wondering if this quiet place could truly become a new beginning for her. Life had tested her in ways she never expected, leaving her with nothing but a small suitcase and a fragile hope that this simple cooking job might help her rebuild her life. The ranch felt distant from the world, surrounded by wide fields, wooden fences, and a silence that almost felt heavy. The cowboy who hired her stood near the barn, tall and serious, his face calm, but his eyes carrying the shadow of a painful past he rarely spoke about. He welcomed her politely but kept his distance, as if protecting a heart that had already been broken once. Near the porch, his little daughter watched quietly without saying a word, her small hands holding a doll tightly, studying the new woman with careful eyes as if she was searching for something important. The next morning the ranch felt slightly different, though the silence of the wide fields remained the same. As the woman stepped into the kitchen to begin preparing breakfast, she noticed small footsteps quietly following her across the wooden floor. When she turned, the little girl stood there holding her doll, watching her with calm but curious eyes. The woman greeted her gently and continued working, thinking the child would soon lose interest and leave, but the girl did not move away. Instead, she slowly climbed onto a chair near the table and kept observing every movement the woman made, from cutting vegetables to stirring the warm pot on the stove. Whenever the woman reached for something, the child quickly tried to help, handing her a spoon or carefully placing plates on the table as if she had done this many times before. The woman felt surprised by the girl's quiet determination, because the cowboy had mentioned the child rarely spoke to strangers and usually stayed distant from everyone. Yet today the girl remained close, almost as if she had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. During breakfast, the cowboy noticed something unusual as well. His daughter, who normally ate in silence and rushed away from the table, stayed beside the woman and even asked if she could help wash the dishes. The cowboy watched quietly from his chair, confusion growing in his mind because he had not seen his daughter this comfortable with anyone since the day his wife passed away. As the morning continued, the girl followed the woman around the ranch house, sometimes bringing small ingredients from the pantry, sometimes asking shy questions about cooking, and sometimes simply sitting nearby with a peaceful smile that had not appeared on her face in years. The woman began to feel a strange warmth in her heart, yet at the same time she sensed that the child's behavior carried a deeper meaning she could not fully understand. In the afternoon, while the sunlight slowly covered the wooden porch, the girl gently held the woman's hand and guided her outside, showing her the small garden behind the house where colorful flowers struggled to grow in the dry soil. The child knelt beside one tiny plant and whispered that her mother used to take care of these flowers every morning before she disappeared from their lives forever. The woman felt a quiet ache in her chest as she listened, realizing how much loneliness had lived inside this small heart. But what confused her even more was the way the girl looked at her with hopeful eyes, as if she believed the woman's presence had already begun to heal something broken inside their home. From the doorway, the cowboy silently watched this scene unfold, unable to explain why his daughter trusted this stranger so deeply. And for the first time in many years, he felt both fear and curiosity, wondering whether this unexpected connection might change their quiet ranch in ways none of them were prepared for. As evening settled over the quiet ranch, and the sky slowly turned orange behind the distant hills, the woman finished preparing dinner and began cleaning the kitchen while the soft sound of wind moved through the wooden walls of the house. The cowboy had stepped outside to finish work near the barn, leaving the home unusually peaceful. After washing the last plate, The woman walked down the hallway to place fresh towels in the small guest room where she slept. As she passed the little girl's bedroom, she noticed the door was slightly open and a gentle whisper came from inside. The woman did not intend to listen, but the soft voice of the child speaking to her doll made her pause for a moment. The girl sat on her bed hugging the doll carefully, as if it were a real friend who could understand her thoughts. In a quiet voice filled with hope, the child said that she believed the new cook was the one she had been waiting for. She explained to the doll that her house had felt empty for a very long time, and her father looked sad almost every day, even when he tried to hide it. The girl softly admitted that when she first saw the woman arrive at the ranch, something in her heart felt warm and safe, the same feeling she used to have when her mother was still alive. The child whispered that she had chosen the woman because she believed she could fix their broken home and bring back the smiles that had slowly disappeared from their lives. Hearing these innocent words made the woman freeze quietly in the hallway, her heart suddenly beating faster as she realized the little girl had been carrying a silent wish deep inside her small heart. The woman felt both touched and overwhelmed because she had only come to the ranch for a simple job, never imagining that someone so young had already placed such a big hope on her presence. For a moment, she stood there in complete silence, unsure whether she should step into the room or quietly walk away. She could hear the girl continue talking to the doll, promising that she would try her best to help the woman stay at the ranch because she believed their home needed her. The innocence of the child's voice filled the hallway with emotion that the woman had not expected to feel again. Slowly, she stepped back from the door and returned to the kitchen, her thoughts swirling with confusion and sympathy. She looked around the quiet house and suddenly understood why the little girl watched her so closely every day and why the child's small smiles carried so much meaning. The woman realized that behind those hopeful eyes was a heart that had been searching for comfort for a very long time. As she stood near the window looking out at the darkening ranch, she began to understand that this place was not only lonely because of its distance from the town, but also because of the pain hidden inside its walls. And without realizing it, she had stepped into a story far deeper than a simple cooking job. Later that night, the house grew quiet again, but the woman could not stop thinking about the little girl's whispered secret. She moved slowly through the kitchen, finishing small tasks when the cowboy finally returned from the barn, dust still on his boots and the tired weight of the day resting on his shoulders. For a moment, neither of them spoke, yet the silence between them felt different than before, heavier with unspoken thoughts. The woman hesitated, but eventually told him something important he deserved to know. She gently explained what she had accidentally overheard in the hallway, repeating the child's innocent words with care so they would not sound like a complaint or accusation. As the meaning of those words settled into the room, the cowboy's expression slowly changed. His strong posture stiffened and his eyes lowered toward the wooden floor as if an old memory had suddenly returned. He remained silent for several long seconds, clearly uncomfortable with what he had just heard. The idea that his daughter had chosen someone to fill the empty space left by her mother stirred emotions he had tried to bury for years. After losing his wife, he had built quiet walls around his heart, believing distance was the only way to protect himself and his daughter from more pain. Allowing another person close felt dangerous, almost like risking the fragile peace he had struggled so hard to maintain. The woman noticed the conflict in his face and softly assured him that the child's words were only the innocent wish of a lonely little girl, nothing more. Yet deep inside, the cowboy knew it was not that simple. Over the past few days, he had already noticed small changes around the ranch. His daughter had started laughing again while helping in the kitchen, and the once silent house now carried warm sounds of conversation during meals. Even the evenings felt different, as if the air itself had become lighter. These quiet changes made him uneasy because they reminded him how empty life had been before the woman arrived. He walked to the window and looked outside at the dark fields stretching across the land, trying to organize the storm of thoughts in his mind. Part of him wanted to ignore the situation completely, to treat the woman as nothing more than an employee and keep the boundaries clear. However, another part of his heart could not deny what he had witnessed during the past few days. His daughter's eyes carried hope again, something he had not seen since the day tragedy entered their lives. The cowboy felt trapped between fear and possibility, unsure whether protecting his heart meant pushing the woman away or allowing fate to quietly change the future of his small family. As he stood there in the dim light of the kitchen, listening to the distant sound of the wind moving across the ranch, he slowly realized that the walls he had built for protection might also be the very reason his home had remained so painfully silent for so long. The following night, the sky above the ranch changed suddenly as dark clouds gathered across the horizon and a strong wind began pushing against the wooden walls of the house. The woman had just finished closing the kitchen windows when the first loud thunder echoed through the valley, shaking the quiet evening with a deep rumble. Rain soon followed, tapping against the roof and windows in restless waves. Inside the house, the lights flickered slightly, creating long shadows along the hallway. The woman was placing a kettle on the stove when she suddenly heard quick footsteps rushing across the floor. A moment later, the little girl ran into the kitchen, her small face pale with fear as another thunderclap cracked across the sky. Without hesitation, the child ran straight toward the woman and wrapped her arms tightly around her waist. The woman immediately knelt down and gently held the girl close, softly telling her that the storm would pass soon and that she was safe. The child trembled slightly but did not let go, resting her head against the woman's shoulder as if that place had always belonged to her. At that moment, the cowboy stepped into the hallway after hearing the noise. He had expected his daughter to run to him the way she usually did during storms, yet when he reached the doorway, he stopped quietly. In the soft light of the kitchen, he saw the woman comforting the child with calm patience, brushing the girl's hair gently while whispering reassuring words. The girl slowly relaxed in her arms, her breathing becoming steady again as the thunder continued outside. The cowboy remained silent, watching the scene without interrupting. Something about that simple moment felt powerful and unfamiliar at the same time. For years, storms had only reminded him of loneliness, of the nights when his daughter cried after losing her mother, and he struggled to comfort her while hiding his own grief. But now the house felt different. The kitchen no longer looked empty or cold. Instead, it carried a quiet warmth that he had not felt for a very long time. The woman guided the girl to a chair near the stove and poured warm tea into a small cup, smiling softly while telling a gentle story to distract her from the storm outside. Soon the child began listening with wide eyes, completely focused on every word. The cowboy leaned slightly against the doorframe, realizing that his daughter looked peaceful in a way he had almost forgotten. The laughter that followed the story was quiet but sincere, filling the kitchen with a sound that once belonged to happier times. As he watched them together, he felt a deep conflict inside his chest slowly soften. The walls he had built around his heart suddenly seemed less certain than before. In that simple stormy night, he understood something he had been refusing to admit. The warmth, safety, and sense of belonging he thought had disappeared from his home might have quietly returned the moment the woman walked through the door. As the storm slowly faded and the quiet night returned to the ranch, the woman looked around the warm kitchen and finally understood that this place had already become more than a workplace for her. The little girl rested peacefully beside her, holding her hand with complete trust, as if she had always known the woman belonged there. The cowboy stood silently for a moment before stepping closer, his guarded expression softer than it had ever been before. For the first time in years, he allowed his heart to believe that life might still offer another chance. He gently thanked the woman, not just for the meals she cooked, but for bringing light back into a house that had been filled with silence and grief. The woman realized she had not only found a job, but a home that needed her just as much as she needed it. And that night, the lonely ranch finally felt like a real family again.